Good morning. My name is Jeannie Sweeney, and I'm the founder and the CEO of the Above Board Chamber of Florida. We come to you today to try to figure out a way to heal our community. As everyone knows, in the last couple of weeks, we got hit with 2 hurricanes, one extremely hard. We can fix the things that are broken, like our homes and the things that we lost, and we can replace. The things that we are most worried about in Southwest Florida is our emotions. It has hit a lot of us very, very hard. With that in mind, we decided to do a program where we could bring the best of mental health in Southwest Florida to this webinar. We are going to ask them questions that find out how we can not only help ourselves, so we can help people around us. May it be our employees, our families, or just people in a grocery store that seem to have a hard time. So we invite you to listen to this today, and we hope you share it with others so we can heal together and make Southwest Florida strong. I'm very excited about this program. I'll tell you a little bit about the Above Board Chamber. We are an organization. We're going into our 14th year in Southwest Florida. What we do is panels of experts that teach business topic. Our goal is when people go to our meetings in Lee and Cuyahoga County, that they walk away better than they walked in the door, that they get educated in all different subjects that will help them grow their business and make them a better person. So we're very excited about that. We do a lot of things for our members, like we do webinars, we do meetings that we meet live each month in Lee and Cuyahoga County. We do press releases for free for our members. We do blogs for free. We help give them opportunities to do upcoming events and put them out so we can help promote them in any area that they basically need. We're very, very excited about that. We're also excited to say that everyone that's listening to this webinar today, this Zoom program, they're going to get a copy of this program. So if they find they need to share with someone, please do, because that is the purpose, to get this information out to our community. Now I'd like to take a minute, and I would like to speak to 2 of our sponsors that have stepped up and asked to sponsor this program because they knew it was really important. First, I'm going to bring Javier Fuller. He is the Vice President of Web Designs at Conrick PR and Marketing. As a matter of fact, he does the webinar, he does the website for the Above Board Chamber, and I think he's had just about since we started 14 years ago. So we are excited. Javier, thank you for what you do for the Above Board Chamber, but tell us a little bit about Conrick PR and Marketing.
Well, thank you, Jeannie. We're very excited and honored to be part of this program. We're very happy to sponsor it as well. Conrick PR is a full-service marketing agency based here in Southwest Florida. We have clients across 35 different states, and we provide full-service PR and marketing services, such as website design, press releases. We do social media marketing, email marketing, and all sorts of digital marketing, branding, and we are very long time partners of the Above Board Chamber, and we've been members of the Above Board Chamber for a very long time. It's a great organization. We look forward to the meetings every single month. So if you need marketing services, branding services, if it's time to rebrand your organization, or if there's been some changes since the hurricane, or anything else you need to get out and let the world know about your company, about your organization, give us a call at Conrick PR Marketing. We'll be happy to help.
Thank you, Javier, and thank you for all you do for the Above Board Chamber. Our other sponsor is Miss Vicki Tracy. If you live in Southwest Florida, and especially in the Naples area, if there was somebody that was the first lady of Naples, it would be Vicki Tracy. I don't think there's anything that this lady can't do. She's a very dear friend of mine. And if you need help in any area, I've seen her help children. I've seen her help seniors. I've seen her help organization. She works 24/7. And Vicki is the vice president, and she's the chief operating officer at Gulf Coast International Properties, and she does a phenomenal job day in and day out building up Cuyahoga County. I don't think there's anyone that loves Naples area more than Vicki. Vicki, tell us a little bit about Gulf Coast International Properties and what you do for us, and we cannot thank you enough.
Well, thank you, Jeannie. And I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Bottle Washer, I think, at Gulf Coast International Properties, and companies like GCIP that are very grateful to belong to the Above Board Chamber. I've been in Naples for 45 years this year, and I'm involved with a lot of things, but I can honestly tell you that the Above Board Chamber, from a business level, has done more for our awareness and keeping us relevant than anything else that we do in business. So thank you, and thank you for putting together panels like these. And it was awful nice to hear that long list of things that you said, but I kept thinking, who's she talking about?
Ah,
So thank you for hosting this today, Jeannie, and I think the information is certainly going to be relevant.
Well, we appreciate you, and we appreciate Javier and his people that he works with, like Connie Ramos Williams, and you have Tim. We have all these wonderful people in the community that build up our community. And even though we got knocked down a little bit, we're going to be built better. We're going to be better, and we're going to be stronger because we are Southwest Florida strong. So with that being said, we are going to start our program. So I'm very excited about it. Vicki, I'm going to ask you if you can introduce and tell us a little bit about our panelists. We're very, very honored to have join us today.
Well, as usual, Jeannie, you've put together some of the area's most respected and certainly learned healthcare professionals. I'd like each of them to tell a little bit about themselves. I'll start with Scott Burgess, who is the Chief Executive Officer at David Lawrence Centers for Behavioral Health. Hi, Scott. Great to see you again. And from a community standpoint, we want to thank David Lawrence and you for everything that you are doing. I know people don't see a lot of the things you do behind the scenes and calls to Tallahassee, et cetera, et cetera. So please say a little bit about yourself and what the great work you're doing at David Lawrence.
Oh, terrific. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to present with my esteemed colleagues here today. And Scott Burgess, I've been now at David Lawrence Centers for Behavioral Health almost 9 years. It'll be 9 years in January. In many days, it feels like that flew by, and other days it feels like it's been longer than 9 years. But I've been now in behavioral health this is my 31st year. I worked at a large healthcare organization for 22 years and started out as an entry-level clinician, worked my way up to the executive director of the outpatient behavioral health services for the whole hospital system. And then had the blessing and the opportunity to come here to Naples, Collier County community, and just feel very fortunate to work with amazing colleagues here at DLC. We've got about 375 staff members. I've got multiple locations. We're a 24/7, 365 organization, providing inpatient, outpatient, and community-based supports for children and adults across the whole age spectrum. And we provide support for behavioral health, which is both mental health and addiction treatment. And many of the folks that we work with have co-occurring, so they've got challenges in both of those areas. So happy to be here today, happy to share some information, and looking forward to the dialogue where we can answer some questions that folks may have today that are participating in this webinar.
Thank you, Scott, and welcome to Dawn Bellamarch. We're happy to have you as a new member, a new community member, a new member of the Above Board Chamber. And like most things with Jeannie, jump in and just start swimming, Dawn. That's what we have to say. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and I'd also like you to tell the guests how long you've been here.
Sure. Thanks, Becky. So my name is Dawn Bellamarch. I am new to the Florida region, definitely Lee County. I moved down 3 days before the storm, and I have taken a leadership role with Lee Health, which I am really grateful to be a part of. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and similarly to Scott, I was in organizations where I was able to grow from within. So for the last 6 years, I've been an executive director, CEO, and a senior VP at a large addiction treatment, a national addiction treatment organization. So standing up addiction treatment and really help servicing the community all the way from New Jersey and Pennsylvania to Indianapolis and Illinois area. And I am recently down here, and I am heading up the behavioral health division for the Lee Physician Group, which includes right now some inpatient consult services and then some outpatient services on both the behavioral side and the addiction medicine side. So a lot of my plans is to really see how we can get in and work with our partners on here to serve the community, but also fill needs that may not be being met right now, especially post-storm. So I'm a licensed mental health counselor and a master's level, addiction professional here in the state of Florida. And then I'm also licensed in New Jersey and I will be finishing my doctorate in business administration and leadership within the next year. So I am grateful to be here. I appreciate Jeannie for having me on the panel and excited to get some information out about Lee and the services we can help support with.
Great, welcome again. We'll inaugurate you as your tenure comes down. There's a special inauguration. We'll make sure that you're there.
Great, can't wait. Thanks, Becky.
Next, we have Beth Hatch. Many of our listeners know Beth. She's been in our community for a while, and she's certainly served our community in certain capacities, but she's the Chief Executive Officer of NAMI, which is well known certainly in Collier County. Beth, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Vicki, and thanks, Jeannie, and glad to be part of this panel today. So you still have me beat, Vicki, but 33 years that I've been in Collier County, went to Barron Collier, so all the way back then. And my career has started as a special education teacher in Collier County, and then transitioned into nonprofit for the rest of the time. And I am only 4 months old at NAMI Collier, but have partnered with NAMI in many of my past positions. So thrilled to be here. I think it's just perfect timing with our need and everything that's going on. A lot of my experience has been in early learning, but in the last few years with everything that we've been through, that multi-generational family, how it looks in our community and all of our households, it really has hit. So we've covered that in the past few years for all ages, all the way up to seniors. So I'm just so excited. You know, NAMI is we're one of 600 affiliates throughout the country. So it's not that clinical base, it's more of that advocacy and navigation so that we can make sure our members, they get to be who they are and we get them through this. And so excited for all we can do in the future, especially with the increased need. So thank you again.
Well, I know NAMI is happy to have you, Beth, so
Thank you.
welcome again.
Thank
So
you.
Scott, we're going to start with you. We'll go, and again, I think the audience is, you can text, message us on the Zoom message board if you would like to have a question read and answered by any of our expert panelists, but we're going to start with Mr. Burgess. Can I believe that I just called you Mr. Scott? Oh
I
my
know
goodness.
you say that. I look around for my dad.
So why has Hurricane Ian had such a dramatic negative emotional impact on most of us, even when some of us weren't directly affected?
Yeah, so I did a presentation last week and I kind of started out with the question of, is everybody feeling a little worn these days? And, you know, just to try to lighten the mood a little bit, but trying to also articulate the fact that this Hurricane Ian, it has been devastating, and it's one aspect of a lot of things that we've been dealing with. So there's this cumulative effect that's been going on. There's this compounding effect that we've been experiencing. So here in specific in Southwest Florida, when we kind of look a little bit more longitudinally, just at the last 5 years, we had Hurricane Irma. We've had 2.5 years of a pandemic, and we're still kind of sort of getting our way out of that. And then we had another hurricane. So we've had a number of events that have been very challenging, really life-altering events for our community and for individuals. So I think that's why so many people were already feeling as if they were kind of at their last, you know, the last thread, if you will, and then one more thing happened. So that's of course, anybody that's been directly impacted by the hurricane, it's you know, been an upheaval of their entire life. We have 14 staff members here at DLC that either lost homes or lost cars or had their world really disrupted. Of course, that impacts the individual, it impacts the family, it's impacting our community, and that you multiply that by the thousands of people that have been directly impacted. And then indirectly, people are just feeling worn because it's one more kind of gut punch that we're all feeling in a series of many of those. So that's why, you know, we were already seeing depression and anxiety growing at pretty exponential rates. So I kind of put it in the context of these natural kind of experiences that have been happening that have negatively impacted us and our community. And then if you actually even go back a little bit further in time, so we take a snapshot a little bit more longitudinally across, say, the last 10 years or so, and we can take a look at children's mental health in specific and the growth of the behavioral health challenges for kids in our country. And, you know, some of that can be associated with the pandemic. Then we go further back than that with the school shootings and the things that they have been seeing and that they've been dealing with. So quite frankly, we've just, as a nation and as a community, we've really had a lot of traumatic events that we've been dealing with. And then we can throw even some of the political angst in there and the division that we've seen more and more on an uprise. So that's why I think we're all feeling this as much as we all are. Even if we weren't directly impacted by Hurricane Ian, we've all been experiencing a lot of traumatic events, either directly or vicariously, that have kind of led us to where we're at right now.
Thank you. Don, I'm going to go over to you. Welcome again. Your background is amazing, and I know our community is going to benefit, certainly in several counties. But what I know Lee Health does a lot, and we see them all over the place, but what services actually does Lee Health offer to support those in need now? I appreciate Scott's historical data, but how can we connect someone with services that Lee Health presents now?
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. I think one of the things that we're trying to do in the behavioral health side at Lee is really expand our access, especially during crises, as Scott mentioned, that are plaguing the community. So we have two different sides of the house for behavioral health. One side is our outpatient clinic. So if someone feels, you know, deeply impacted by the storm or all life circumstances and the human experience, as I call it, they're able to get in with an outpatient therapist. So we have LCSWs and psychologists in our outpatient clinic, as well as psychiatrists and then addiction medicine specialists. So, you know, if there's an appointment that needs to be made, we could have someone connect with us. And, you know, to Beth's point earlier, that's more the clinical side of the house where clinical services happen and clinical supports. On the, you know, community side, we do have some services where if someone's really struggling, we can have a social worker come to someone's home. It's a short-term intervention services, more on a community engagement side, and really just talking people through what they need. A lot of people through the storm needed resources they've never needed in their life, you know, food, shelter, furniture. So we've been linking a lot of community members to local thrift stores, making connections where they can get resources that they've never had to access before. And then we can also link them to a more clinical, you know, service through ourselves or our partners if more intensive services are needed. We've also embedded psychologists in our primary cares, which I think is a really great resource that Lee Health is offering. So if you come into, you know, a primary care appointment or a gynecological or, you know, come in for a surgery, there's psychologists that we're embedding in those practices to help attend to some of those, you know, behavioral health needs before they maybe spiral out of control and lead to something that requires more clinical services. So, you know, in my 6-week tenure so far, I've seen a lot of, you know, great resources we're offering, but one of my goals is to really expand upon that and to get a real strong glimpse of the community so we can offer more supports.
Thank you so much. Beth, this one's for you. After the feds leave and the states leave and the emergency response have ended, there's all these entities that we're dealing with, financial entities. And if anybody knows a drywaller, please, you can make $1 million in my neighborhood. But why is it so important for local mental health after the response has ended? Could you address that, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, Vicki. You know, we're so grateful for the quick response that we received. I think we were quicker this round, you know, from Ian than maybe sometimes in the past. The quick response, the funding through FEMA, state, county, but the emotional and the mental health impacts of these disasters, as we've said, they're going to last a long time after the physical rebuilding process is complete. And knowing in our community where people can go for that ongoing support and to find someone to talk to is critical. Knowing that there's free, low-cost options for care and support that can make a huge difference in people reaching out for the help that they need. The need across all federal, for us to make that investment in mental health, that's needed at every level. But the survivors of this will always receive the best, most appropriate services from those who live in their community and who can relate. And when we say that we're all in this together, it means we can't underestimate the human value and the connection that we have, that, you know, strengthening each other. So.
Very good. Scott, this is not on your list. You can be mad at me later. But from a business perspective, this is the Above Board Chamber. We're reaching out to each other as businesses and colleagues. When people think of mental health, they're like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, or they don't want to know there's an issue, but I'm just talking about the business. We have 10 people in my firm that are homeless, that have we found temporary things, but talk about how important it is to, especially with David Lawrence, to partner with the local businesses, and how can a local business partner with you? And I'm just thinking about these teams, everybody on this panel. I see some of the guests that have joined us. How important is it, and what can David Lawrence do to help businesses and maybe get away from some of that stigma?
Yeah, it's a great question, and what we've been doing actually before the hurricane, we established a campaign to elevate the awareness around mental well-being, and we're calling it Mind Your Mind. We've had information that we've been pushing out through our Mind Your Mind campaign all year long. And so we've got it's Mind Your Mind, dlcmindyourmind.org. We would encourage businesses to go to that website. We have a different topic matter every month, and the topic that we pushed out a lot of information around in October was related to coping skills, resiliency. So there's some really good information that's on that website. So what we're trying to do, we understand that some people are going to be reluctant maybe to reach out to get support, but if we can just have people getting information that hopefully can be very helpful to them in their own self-care, that can be a great source of information. And I would encourage businesses to also look at that information, because it can be really easy information to push out to employees. And in addition to that, we also are offering going in, we started providing some presentations to businesses directly, where we can go in and we can do, whether it's a lunch and learn type of 1 hour presentation, it can be virtual, it can be live, where we're going into businesses and we're talking about self-care and we're talking about resiliency. So those can be opportunities where we can partner together to try to bring some helpful tools and tips and resources directly to individuals and businesses. So we're really happy to provide that level of support.
I think it'll be important as Javier and Jeannie share this information, that you share your contact information and businesses. So most of the time at Above Board Chamber, it's managers or directors or heads of company, to help guide them along the way. I know that employees often don't. I mean, we have, I think, 100 and I don't know how many. That again, the gentle way of saying, hey, you're not alone, but here's a third-party resource for you. I think it's really important that you share the website and others, but sorry, I'm volunteering you again. It's called Voluntold. To be able to contact you in your office directly, especially when you're with Lee County and I know Charlotte, but Lee and Collier, they want to talk to the head guy. They want to make sure that their information is protected. So if you would mind sharing that at the end, that would be super great. So get ready, 100 people are going to call you. That's all I'm saying.
That's perfectly fine. I actually just sent my email to Javier, so I think he was planning to maybe offer that at the end, or maybe you could push it out to everybody that's on the presentation now in the chat box maybe, and then obviously out to the full constituency later.
Thank you. And Dawn, your background is amazing. Listening to you talk, Jeannie prepares us with you all. And yeah, I'm not going with any of those questions after hearing your background.
Great.
You know, in a small community, people call everybody for things that you would say, what are you calling me about that for? I have no knowledge. But when you're that go-to person, which
Mhm.
most of the people on the panel are, tell us, give us some pointers to say that when a colleague or a neighbor or a friend is just overwhelmed, and again, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I kind of did. Can you say things like, give us some tips? What do I say? You know, my tendency is like, okay, how can I help you? We'll come clean. But maybe that's not the right thing to say.
Yeah, I appreciate you putting me on the spot. I think it's timely, and I also offered myself up, Becky, so I appreciate that. But I think one of the things that most people just skip over is the listening part. I think during the storm and after the storm, one of the most essential pieces was to just hear people and hear their experience and, you know, listen as they're going through what their struggle was. And, you know, I've noticed a lot of people really will go to their standard line of, oh, it could have been worse, or I know people who've had it worse. And I've probably heard that 1,000 times since I moved down here. But making them pretty clear on it doesn't minimize their experience, and it's okay not to be okay, I think is a huge part of being a helper. And it also helps you build a rapport where they want to ask for help when they need it instead of waiting for a crisis. So, you know, listening first and foremost, right? Obviously jumping in to help when you can, but I think people's experience is unique to them. It doesn't mean that their experience is less because it wasn't as great as somebody else's or different than someone else's. And the best asset we can provide as human beings to another human being is the ability to listen.
Mhm.
Great, perfect. Thanks again. Scott, a couple of the things that we're going off the topic from, but as you all are saying things that trigger other things to say, and again, I know David Lawrence has a lot of resources. Is there anything that you can recommend that's just respite? I feel like we've got so much going on, and like you mentioned earlier, the hurricane and then the storm and then the elections and then something else. And then in Southwest Florida, Dawn, welcome to the beginning of season, which the funniest, some of the funniest things, I'll tell one quick funny story, but my question to you, Scott, is leaning towards respite. So during the crux of the hurricane, and GCIP does luxury, so most of our clients are in Port Royal, Aqualine, and Pelican Bay. They're up north. They're anxious about their house. And so I had a very sweet elderly lady call and said, and half of her house was quite definitely affected, but she didn't know how bad. She said, I have to ask you something. I just don't know what to do. And right away we go into that. It's okay. I'm going to help you. What can we do? Is Marissa's on 3rd Street open? And I said, but it dawned on me, the things that are important to people, being here is one thing, the thousands that are up north that are just coming back. Can you suggest something that we can encourage people to do for just respite so that we're not always dealing with the funny story about Marissa, but really, I think it was a reality thing. What can people do to just go, ah?
Yeah, you know, the first thing that I think about related to that is trying to keep a lot of people get very anxious when there's a disruption of routine, right? So, you know, it can feel very calming and almost a respite if individuals are able to maintain some level of routine. And so from the standpoint, if individuals enjoy going to the beach, that's relaxing. Our beaches are still open. Maybe there's aspects of them that you need to, you know, watch out, but the beaches are still there. I believe all of the artistic opportunities that we have is from an artistic entertainment standpoint are available here, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the beaches are there, but you can't go to them. That's
Yeah.
kind of my point for the respite.
I didn't realize that they were all closed.
Someone.
Oh,
All of Collier County is closed, and I'm sure I talked to the best, wonderful sheriff up there. I don't think any in Lee County have opened, and yeah, Collier is
I would say,
definitely
yeah,
closed.
Lee definitely is closed.
No, Collier's not
I knew that the pier was closed, but I didn't realize that all of the beaches have been closed. Are we anticipating that to be for all season?
We don't anticipate anything here in Cuyahoga County. Our sheriff, Kevin Rambosk, is an amazing, his team, as is Carmine as well. They're working hard, trying to, the city and the county working together. The issue is a lot about debris and safe, again, I'm not the expert on what the county is doing, but I think you can walk on the beach, you just can't go in the water, but don't quote me on that. The water's closed. I don't know how they judge. I know that bacteria wasn't an issue in Lee County, but again, back over to the, you can look at it, but you can't touch it. Like, how do we create diversion to some of the things that you used to do to create a routine? I know most 99% of the businesses on Fifth and Collier's open, Mercado's open, east of the trail things. How do we encourage people to do somewhat normal things without, then you go to a place, especially near the water, that you see all the devastation. Maybe we kind of say, okay, you may want to try this.
Yeah.
And maybe
well,
that's a point for all the mental health professionals here. Maybe you all could create some suggestions that could be posted on Jeannie's website for teams. Hey, consider this. And museum, you mentioned, I don't know all of them, but I know mental health professionals, when you're talking about normalcy, routine, things like that, that you could suggest some things to do. And maybe it's as simple as getting together, for coffee or a glass of wine. So, and
Yeah, no, I
I
think
don't
that
know
that's
what the
that's
answers
a
are.
point really well taken for us to try to put something out there as a community. And I would encourage that the businesses post that and that we somehow get that even broader, whether it's through Naples Daily News or some other types of media outlets, because that, having an opportunity to have respite, to recreate, to get people's minds onto, things that are a little more positive, to direct them into whether it's the museums or the art experiences. Naples Botanical Garden, I know that's a huge place for that people love to go. Right now, I'm not exactly sure the extent of the damage that they may have had there, but so I think those are the things that we're going to have to research a little bit and be able to provide people with those viable options. Certainly the things more inland are fine, like the Children's Museum and things of that sort. But I think that's a point really well taken. We want people to have opportunities to enjoy recreation in the places that they've historically enjoyed that as much as they possibly can.
So Jeannie, maybe that's a task that I offer to you and our co-members, that we maybe collectively start posting things you can do, except instead of what you can't do. And then Dawn, the next question goes to you about this very topic. Like, how do you identify signs? I'm not a mental health care professional, but how do you implore me? And I don't want every answer to be called Dawn. Is there something that you can give us as tips for how do we identify that? Oh, that's something more than normal happening there.
Yeah, I think the number one indicator for me is always a change in behavior or a change in routine or a change in presentation of how a human being typically functions. So I'll give you an example. I'm not in my house until December, and I've been staying at a condo with some really great ladies during the storm. And, I met a couple of them right before the storm, and then I started to notice some real isolative behaviors after the storm, not leaving their house. During this last storm, there was a lot of apprehension around coming outside and almost fear around coming outside about the day before the storm, which from what they said is really atypical for that person, right? They're very social, they're outgoing. I always just look for changes in behaviors and patterns. And that's always my first indicator. I mean, I am a mental health professional, so I've told Jeannie this. I have no problem talking openly about myself and my human experience. And I always try to check in on people when I see changes in them. I just strongly encourage everybody, especially during this time, is check in on people who are changing things up or experiencing things differently or not speaking up in meetings, or if it's a family member that's always at dinner and they're, not coming around anymore. You'll notice by the change in behavior, and that's the moment to have the conversation.
Thank you. This one's for you, Beth. I know NAMI does a lot in the community when there isn't a crisis going on. And I think that in business, most of the people in this group of extended people of Above Board Chamber have children.
Mhm.
Why are the children so at risk for the disaster? Can you touch on that?
Absolutely. Here at NAMI, we start in the toddlers and go all the way to seniors. Our youngest is infants right now, because there's a pattern in that family, and our oldest at our drop-in center is, in her late 80s. So, and most important, so many of these people that we see in Southwest Florida are alone. So being able to be their advocate is so important. But children differ in their responses because some of them, depending on their age, they haven't developed the process of they haven't been able to develop their skills to emotionally, cognitive, behaviorally, sensory skills. They're not developed yet. So we know as an adult how hard it is, but depending on their age group, they may not even be there. A child's brain is, 85% is developed before they're by age 3. So, we see when they're moving from different houses, their living arrangements, their personal property is gone, their parents have suffered unemployment, their basic needs. Why isn't there as much food on the table? My many years in early learning and some of our poverty areas of our county, you would see on Monday mornings how much the children would eat at breakfast and lunch, and that really showed what happens during their weekend and how much they're experiencing or getting in. But because these natural disasters and pandemics and everything that Scott said before and we've mentioned, they're becoming more frequent and increasing in their severity, unfortunately. And now we're facing the real challenge of raising a generation that they've experienced so much tragedy and hardship in their formative years. So it's helping them living through the pandemic, experiencing or witnessing the devastation, is really putting our children's resiliency to the test. And we're kind of, we're bringing up a different generation than we basically went through ourselves. Parents and educators are facing the challenge of, helping children learn to deal with these situations. And strong relationships are the foundation. And it's no different for a child than an adult. We need to listen. Way back in my career, I had a CEO that said, you never ask how you're doing unless you really have the time for that person to answer you. So you can really hear what they have to say. And I think now more than ever, however little they are or however old, we need to stop and listen to how they are doing. And children are going to show us in different ways, but there's such a transition. We were really boots on the ground right immediately after the storm, even before our drop-in center, our offices came available. And some of you have already heard me say this in previous meetings, but, we were doing hot meals for like the first 3 weeks, every single night, just the basic needs, because everybody looks at mental health, but your basic needs need to be met first. And there was a little guy who's 4 years old, and he came running up to me and he hugged me and he's like, "You came back."
Oh.
And then he yelled, "Mommy, dinner is here." And, it's those things that, what if I didn't come back? That has lasting impact on a child and to anyone, let's be honest, and more stress on the parent. So we just need to be that positive role model and listen and reach out. And definitely reach out because everybody needs us right now. And it's more than I think sometimes we imagine, especially in Collier County sometimes.
Well, you bring up a very
Vicki,
good
can I
point.
jump in for a second?
Mm.
I just want to share a story, and I think I did with a couple of the panelists. There was a little girl, like 5, in Lee County, and her school got torn down. It got really bad, injured. And the mother showed her in pictures her school. 2 weeks later, she went to another school. The child never said a word, had no emotions. Hope I don't cry. When she went to the new school, she went into the classroom and she saw the teacher and she went hysterical crying, and nobody knew why. It was the first time she cried because she saw her teacher there. She thought her teacher lived in the other school that got messed up, and her teacher died and was not able to verbalize it. But there's children that are not speaking, and that's not good either, correct? Any of you can talk about that.
The not speaking or not
Yeah.
identifying when Beth
Yeah.
was speaking about the youth. And I don't know, the professionals can answer this, but the other impact are the senior citizens.
Exactly.
Whether, and I don't think it's an income related issue because I know both sides of the track. And not listening, certainly senior citizen, elderly,
Mhm.
youth, I think the process is the same. But this is my question to all three of you. So now we've identified someone, maybe we reaching out, again, offering a meal or an ear. Then what do we do? So I'd like each one, am I going to call Beth at home every day? Like, I literally don't know. And you think I know everybody, I know everybody. Who do I call and
Yeah.
how do maybe my neighbor, friend, associate doesn't want to talk to you. What's the step? Who do I call just to say, hey, there's resources for you. So Scott, if you start and then we'll go you, Dawn, and Beth.
Sure. Well, I think, if there are natural resources that people may feel more comfortable utilizing, I think you want to assess that. So for
Like
example-
what? Like give an example.
So an example would be if it's a child at a school, most of the schools do have a social worker or a psychologist or somebody that they can speak to. So if they feel more comfortable in their own, what I would call natural setting, reaching out to somebody, and that would just be a telephone call, perhaps to the school, to let them know that this child seems to be struggling a little bit, and put that child kind of on the radar of the school system that can then try to provide some support naturally within that community. If it's a senior, it may be a call to the senior center, because I know the senior center here in Naples, they have case managers and they have some counselors, and they're trying to provide targeted support. Some of the seniors may already be utilizing the senior center services, so that might feel a little bit more comfortable to them. And then certainly as organizations, we're available. So for David Lawrence Center specifically, I mean, we've got, our telephone number that could link somebody into care. We have our walk-in clinic, so people can, during the day, from 9 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we've got basically a behavioral health urgent care that people can just come over to our.
They can just walk in.
Just walk in. Yeah, we have a behavioral health urgent care that right here on our Golden Gate campus off of Golden Gate Parkway and 75. And people can just walk in and they can let us know what's going on. And we're going to do a real-time screening assessment. And we're going to try to determine what's the best pathway for an individual, whether that's, hopefully it hasn't gotten to the point where they're acutely in distress and in a crisis situation that they would need inpatient support. Most of the time, people will get connected with outpatient services. Another thing that we started doing with the pandemic is we really ratcheted up our telehealth services. So we've got a number of counselors that are available, and doctors and nurse practitioners that are available through telehealth, that people don't even have to walk on campus. They can fill out all of their forms online. They can then get connected to a doctor or a counselor through telehealth support. So those are just, so I would say explore as much as possible whatever's most comfortable for individuals, and that may be in those natural settings we were talking about. But then if there's additional support that's necessary, certainly engaging people, through organizations like DLC or Lee Health or NAMI are appropriate steps as well.
Miss Dawn.
So I'll just piggyback off of that. I mean, I have typically, in a newer role, especially, I think, come in 30,000 feet. I don't know all the resources yet. So 211 has always been a main number I would give anyone that's looking for resource. To Scott's point, obviously, Lee Health has a variety of clinics in behavioral health and a contact center number, right? That's the main hub for getting an appointment or getting some advice. But I did try to call 211 as a test run when I moved down here, just to see what kind of resources we had available. And I was directed to the right place for things that I was reporting. So I think there's a wealth of knowledge there. You might need furniture. You might need someone from Lee to come out and help you with resources. But, that United Way line always links people up with it the best that you can, because they're getting a higher vantage point.
It's funny that you mentioned 211. I'm one of the founders of 211 here in Collier County. So we worked very hard years ago to we started with the Sheriff's Department, and then it vacillated over to United Way. And thank you for bringing it up, because so many people still don't know what that is, and it'll look to childcare and other things as well. So thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome,
going
Vicky.
to-
I did call it. I called it a
Yeah.
couple times, so I could tell you
See?
it is being
You're
utilized.
now my favorite panelist, Beth.
Oh,
It's Dawn. I mean, it's
Sorry,
oh my goodness.
guys.
So this question, of course, is not on the papers either. Let's talk about the cost of this. So you mentioned all of these wonderful resources. And so I'm Joe Schmo. Maybe I'm concerned. Maybe I'm a senior. Maybe I'm a mom. Maybe I don't know. What is the cost impact on this? So if I was calling Beth or Lee or Scott, talk me through it. Do I have to pay? Are there services available to me? If each of you could bring up, Beth, we'll start with you this time. Talk about the cost and what the impact has it on a business and an individual.
So everything at NAMI is free. We don't charge for any of our services, and part of our process in helping our clients and our members is that, you know, we help them navigate that system. So if they need help with medication, or even the process, if to find a job or to, you know, apply for disability, we help them through that process. So for all of our programs, we don't charge anything. I just want to even just go back, and I will continue my answer, I promise, Vicki, but so starting today, the Collier Disaster Relief Center for Collier moved this afternoon. Actually, it's reopening at 1:30, and it's at the Eagles Lakes Park off of Tamiami Trail in East Naples. It was off of Veterans in North Naples before, and I'm really happy that it's changed to a different area of Collier County, because I think it will be able to meet more of that population who may not have transportation or just easier access. In NAMI, we have staff members through Central Florida Behavioral Network that is staffing our NAMI employees there. So so they're open from 9 to 5, and they're going to be open right now 7 days a week. The next day to close is just Thanksgiving. So that is just another resource that anyone can go to completely free in this time of need. And then obviously we have all the resources. We have all these DLC's info, Lee Health information. I wasn't sure because the site has moved a few times, but we made sure that our staff has everybody's info. So that's just another resource that's happening right now, kind of like what we said from that beginning question. That stuff will go away, but at those sites, really connecting. And one of the things that I actually told my team, because it goes along with that stigma, you know, you have FEMA assistance at one table, you have this, and then it has like mental health. Well, everybody does that walk, you know, puts their head down, not me. And, you know, so I said, why don't you just say, you want to talk about the storm? You want to talk? You know, and how different that will be for people, because you don't necessarily have to put it to mental health. But for NAMI, we really just try to connect everybody to their services and their support groups. And something that we're really looking at since the storm is what we talked about before, going out to businesses and really reaching, you know, small groups of seniors. You know, I talked about the one that's in her 80s that's with us on a daily basis, but how about her neighbors where she lives? I checked on just a family member's condo, and when I went to go check on that, there was an 85-year-old all by herself, you know, who didn't have any family member here. And now, you know, she's my new adoptee, so to speak. But making sure that she has those resources. So I think just in general, when you're checking on someone else, check the neighbor too, because you just never know. And all she wanted was bananas. And I said, you know, it was right after the storm. And I said, I'm going to hunt this town for bananas. And obviously I brought her bananas and then some, you know, but it was, obviously it was a feel good for everybody, but it's just that knowledge of so many people don't have something. So it's really connecting them. Hope I answered the right way.
You did. And again, I want to certainly encourage you and Scott, and maybe Dawn, as she gets to, I know Scott's involved with Moorings Park, and you're so close to the Arlington, which is near and dear to my heart. Maybe just considering, even though some of them didn't get a direct hit, maybe just, and I'll help facilitate some of them if you want.
Yeah.
Like, go and speak to them as a group in independent and assisted living. Just go speak and so they can hear they're not alone. I think the biggest issue that when you're dealing with your banana friend is
Absolutely.
I'm not alone. I'm not alone.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
go ahead, Miss Beth.
You want me
Is
to
that good?
continue? Or,
No,
or-
I mean, yeah, no, keep it buying bananas. That's all I have
okay.
to say.
Oh, okay.
Don, give
She's
your
got
take
breakfast,
on
lunch,
it.
and dinner. Don't you worry.
Sure. So the community-based programs we have are all free of charge, similar to the other panelists. We do have at our clinic, we obviously take insurance for therapy and we take it for the psychiatric, any addiction medicine side. But we do open our doors to everyone. So we have sliding fee. We, have grant funding for maybe some individuals who can't access any sort of funding stream. So very similar to everyone else. We're not going to turn anyone away that needs help. We figure it out. And really that's the crux of what we do, from the door, is figure out how we can best serve the needs around all of those, potential barriers.
So give me an example of how Lee Health, if I called you and our friends in Cape Coral, Jeannie included, that I called you and I said, I need help. What do you walk us through that just a tad? Like whether it be, I don't know what the need, I mean, I know people need cable, you can't help that. People need electric, you can't help that. Maybe they need a couch. Like give a couple of examples if you could.
Yeah, so I think we'll talk with the first side, which is like the furniture and maybe cable, because I struggled to get cable for a week after, and that was a huge issue for me in the Cape, because you just sit alone by yourself with voices in your head, and that's a pretty dangerous situation. So, we can deploy a resource to the home, right? Our community engagement crew that may be able to help with some furniture, may be able to sit on the phone with Comcast and just provide that support in real time. But it's really just a phone assessment when you call in. So regardless, whoever answers the phone would assess the situation. What are your needs? Are there some behavioral health things you're struggling with? Is it more basic needs on Maslow's hierarchy that we can come out and help you, kind of get assessed right away? But I think the phone call is the initial rapport building and assessment piece so that we can deploy the appropriate resources or bring someone in for more intensive behavioral health or addiction medicine services. It's not that intrusive. And again, I know people have a lot of apprehension, certainly in this area around calling and asking for help. But, it's confidential, it's private, it's, stays on that call and with the person you're talking to. And it's really important that people understand that.
Really good point. Scott, if you could give an example of how David Lawrence is addressing something. So I call David Lawrence, I get Susie Q on the phone, and then they guide and assess. Then what happens?
Yeah, so and one thing that I don't think has been brought up yet, but in addition to 211, Collier has a really nice resource in what's called the Collier Cares app. So there's actually an application that people can download onto their phone. And that's been an amazing resource for many individuals that it has everything from, kind of food insecurity opportunities for people to link in with food support, for just general physical health care support, for behavioral health support, for addiction support. And it's a really easy, user-friendly resource guide that just is digitally available. So I would strongly encourage that businesses and individuals be aware of that, and B, provide that information to as many people as they possibly can, because quite literally at your fingertips is going to be opportunities to link in with the organizations that kind of specialize in those areas. I think it's really important. We're going to do our very best to link people to the basic needs that they may have in different ways, shapes, and forms. But our specialty is behavioral health. So if we can, have people using 211 and Collier Cares app to directly get linked in with the supports that they need, that's terrific. From our perspective, what we're going to do when somebody calls us or shows up here on campus for our access center and has that immediate screening is we're going to take a look more specifically at their behavioral health needs. We're certainly going to try to provide them some support to those other basic health, basic life needs that they have. But that's where some of the disaster relief centers and other applications, like I was talking about with Collier Cares, can be very helpful to them. If they have a behavioral health challenge, whether that's mental health or an addiction use disorder challenge, we're going to work to try to determine what's the unique pathway that's best for that individual. And again, that may be, we're going to be assessing different services. We've got over 40 different programs here at DLC. So whether it's an inpatient need that somebody has, maybe they've been struggling with their stressors and they're utilizing alcohol even more now than they were before. And maybe they need detox services, or maybe they need our 28-day residential rehab program. Or maybe it's an outpatient situation where connecting them with a counselor or a doctor for outpatient services is the most appropriate. We've got a children's partial hospital program, which is available. The kids can come during the day if they've got real high acute issues and challenges, so we can avert an inpatient stay by them coming and being a part of a day program for a short period of time, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. Monday through Friday could be just enough to help springboard them into addressing their issues and being able to effectively, thrive again. So we're going to assess what the need is, and we're going to link them as swiftly as we can into those care services based on what their unique needs are and what we think is going to be the most effective recovery journey for them.
So a couple of the audience members, one, Susie, thank you for your comment about Blue Zone's power. Blue Zone's power 9 gives suggestions for happy, healthy life. I'm looking at it at the same time. A couple of things. The participants want you all to share your email. So if you could send it to Javier and things like that, that would be helpful, especially you, Dawn, and Beth too. But Beth, everybody wants your email. Secondly, the Blue Zone, I'm sure they do a fabulous job of connecting our community outside of a crisis. How important, Dawn, do you think, did you have Blue Zone in the areas that you came from?
No, if we
No.
did, I was not familiar with it. I was actually Googling it when she sent it through the chat.
How about you, Beth? I know you're familiar. Scott, I can see your hand waving. Beth needs a chance here for the love of God.
Go
Okay.
for it. Go for it.
Go.
I have been a Blue Zone organization, and NAMI is part of that also. It's everything that we're trying to do is, meeting those needs, and that physical, from nutrition, at our drop-in center on a daily basis, there's a hot meal every day, there's showers, those basic needs. It was very, very humbling when I first started, without going into all the detail, but there was a full-time RN from Naples Community Hospital and a CCPS teacher. Both of them, if you met them in the street, you'd be thrilled that she was taking care of your mom in the hospital, or the other one was the teacher of your child. And both of them were homeless, and they needed a place. They needed a place to rest and not be alone. And it's such an issue. I wanted to also share that, and I'll put it in the chat so everybody has it. Obviously, there's the National Suicide Hotline, the 988, which is kind of the 911 for mental health. But NAMI actually has a warm line that runs 365 days a year, from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. daily. And it's run by our certified peer specialist. And they've all lived themselves with some level of mental illness, and they're doing well on their recovery. So it may not be your needing for the other hotline, the 988 hotline, but just to be able to talk. Always is anonymous, and there's no judgment, and it's just really helping to empathize and make those connections also. So, and then again, I'm glad, Scott, you brought up the CARES app, because I thought about that also. As soon as we said the 211, I was like, yo, don't forget the CARES app. So I know we're, sharing that at the DRC centers also. So just really important.
Thank you. Scott, talk about the integration.
I was really excited when you brought up Blue Zones, and that was something I was
Susie
hoping.
Huff did. Susie Huff, give her credit, Susie.
Way to go, Susie. The Blue Zones initiative is really an amazing one, and this community is so blessed to have had it in the community for a long while. I've kind of been active with the Blue Zones project since the inception of it, and it's a great initiative that for those that aren't as familiar with it, essentially they took what's the least common denominator of healthy living for the most centurions in the world that have lived a healthy life for over 100 years or longer. And they broke those down into what they call the Power Nine. And the Power Nine, I'll just kind of describe a few of those things, but essentially what it is, it's not only a response to how do you effectively address resiliency when you're going through a crisis. It's how do you live a long, well life, a well-lived, healthy life. So some of the principles, and I won't go through necessarily all of them, but these can be really helpful, especially when you're going through a time of high anxiety and stress and maybe depression and other things. When you're going through something, you're trying to bring about your best resiliency efforts that you can from a self-care standpoint. It'd be great if people would research the Power Nine Blue Zones, but just move naturally, walking, not heavy weightlifting exercise like Arnold Schwarzenegger stuff, but just walking naturally can really be something that can help decrease the stress and help us from a well-living standpoint. Purpose, having a purpose in your life, whether it's volunteerism or whether it's something that you're doing from a career standpoint that you feel a connection to, a reason to wake up every day. Their data has indicated that just waking up with a purpose every day can add 7 years to your life. Downshift, which is kind of finding ways that you can determine how you can decrease your own personal stress and what are the things that are relieving strategies for you is important. There's other ones, 80% rule, which is related to your diet. Plant slant, also related to your diet. Wine at 5, it's having a healthy relationship with alcohol. So having more of that social component and maybe a glass of wine at 5 o'clock. Don't have no wine for 6 days and expect that you can have 7 or 8 or 10 glasses on Sunday, but having a healthy relationship with wine. Putting your family first, that's another one that can add, it says up to 6 years onto your life by putting your family first and leaning into family. Belonging to a faith community, and that doesn't necessarily have to be any specific denomination, but belonging to a faith community was evidence to add up to 14 years to your life. And then the last one, right tribe, which is in many of these communities, which are called the blue zones across the world. They have moais or right tribes, which is having a small group of people, like maybe up to 5 or 6 or so, that you do life with. That these are people that become, really your own personal tribe that you can lean into and that leans into you, that you're always there to support each other. So those are really great strategies that for well living, whether it's resiliency associated with a major situation where we're all struggling through, whether it's the hurricane or other things, but just in general, really good life habits for us to get integrated into our own personal well-being and self-care.
So this is our last one quick final moment. I've said it before on the open. If these things I know for sure, if you would each mind, we'll start with Beth and then Dawn and then Scott. Just a quick, these things I know for sure. One parting line, quick line to finish out our call.
Thank you, Vicki. I think for businesses and whether you're a neighbor, businesses, just remember that, our healthy mind is part of a healthy body. And that's just so important. And, so when we look at businesses and for employees, let's look at ways it's the connecting, make sure that they have access to the CARES Act, like we said, make sure they understand that how common mental illnesses are and the reasons why things can occur and how stressful situations, take away a storm. It could just be you're caring for a loved one and it's just endless hours. You're working and you're going home and it's just a change in your routine that we've talked about. So, but is your business offering a mental health day? Do you have an employee assistance plan? Is there information that the business has available. And then just making sure you have those team buildings and that positive reinforcement, because no matter what your age, we all need to hear that positive reinforcement, no matter what kind of day we have. So I think it's just important to make sure that everyone knows that they're not alone, and just think about in our daily routines how we can recognize how mental is just as important as our physical well-being every day.
Very good. Miss Dawn?
Hard to follow that one up, Beth, but
Yeah.
I think, for me, when you ask that question, it's kind of twofold. I always use the human experience as like my global, we're all in this together. But as employees or community members or residents or family members, I think just acknowledging that some of the toughest men in the world I've worked with at the highest business levels, they're still a human being. They're still having a human experience. None of us and all of us at the same time are susceptible to, the same thing on any given day. So acknowledging that we're humans and that, there's going to be suffering with that, and it's okay to talk about it. I think as employers, one of my visions, I talked with Jeannie about this, is really to normalize it a little bit more, in not a way that we're relying on talking about mental health and struggles and, that being at the forefront, but normalizing a conversation around it's okay to not be okay. And what do we do with that? And how do we help each other? So, those are the things I think of, especially from an employment front. A crisis just happened, a disaster just happened. How do we normalize for our teams that it's okay to not be okay, and provide the resources to help them get through that?
Bring us on home there, Scotty boy.
Well, it's really hard to follow both of those. I totally agree. I was going to say, that it's so important for us to increase awareness and decrease stigma. This is a perfect opportunity for us as a community and as business, those that are involved with business, to encourage people to think about mental health like they think about every other facet of health, right? There's no shame, there's no stigma, there's no embarrassment if you go to see your cardiologist or any other organ in the body other than the brain. It doesn't make any sense. It never has made any sense. And it really just all goes back to the longstanding stigma. So we have to, as a society, open up the dialogue and the conversation and try to normalize it, and see if we can encourage people to link in with, self-care first, having tools and tips that are available to them to help with their resiliency and their skill building. And then it should not be an issue if people need to have some additional support. And so I think that to me is where we need to go directionally as a society, and continue this conversation, break down every artificial and real barrier we possibly can. Because at the end of the day, one thing that I know for sure, treatment works. Treatment works. We are losing two Americans to suicide for every homicide in America. We lost 100,000 Americans to opioid overdose epidemic this last year. In the last 12 months, we lost 40,000 in total to motor vehicle accidents across our country. When people suffer silently with their despair, it leads to bad outcomes. When people get the treatment that they need to help support them, it leads to positive outcomes. So we have the opportunity, we have the services that work. We just need to make sure we're breaking down every real and artificial barrier to help people link to them.
Well, I'll tell you, you guys have been absolutely amazing. I've learned a lot. A lot of good resources came out of this, Jeannie and Javier. So I hope that we can post some of these links and things to each one of our expert panelists. But Beth, Dawn, what a pleasure to meet you and welcome you. Beth, you're always so knowledgeable, and Scott, thank you for all you do for our town. And back to you, dear Jeannie. A lot of good information today.
Wow, I don't even know where to start. I just want to thank Vicki. Vicki, you are outstanding. I know you're really busy, and I roped you in to do this, but there was nobody that could do it better than you, to keep this meeting going and make sure we had the right information for everyone that gets the opportunity to listen to this. Javier, thank you for help putting it together for us. And also Javier and Vicky, thank you for sponsoring this meeting. Our panelists, you are amazing. You know, at the end of our meetings for the Above Board Chamber, I always say, when God brings us into the world, he gives us gifts, but they're not gifts too, we give them away. So thank you for giving away your gifts today. We do have meetings coming up. We have Lee County is going to be the 8th of December, and Naples is going to be the 12th. We were just talking earlier about bring something that's happy. We are looking to do meetings. We're working on them right now to bring the happy back to people, even if it's for an hour and a half for the room in Naples on the 12th and an hour and a half on the 8th. If we can bring people in there and get rid of the business, let's bring some joy back in. Let's bring some happy back into her. I needed to. I lost lots. We all need this, and I think it's really important. Another thing that I'd like to share is the holidays are coming. It's really, really important to give everybody a voice. We mentioned that. I mentioned it to our panelists and everybody earlier. Voices are really, really important so people feel like they're being heard. I'm just going to ask one more thing. I'm going to call each one of your names. I want you to say your email and your phone number if you wish, whatever you want. In case we don't get it on the screen, I want people to hear you say it. Scott, could you please give us your contact information?
Sure. My email is scottb@dlcenters.org.
Thank you very much. Beth, can you please give us your information?
Absolutely. B Hatch, HATCH at NAMI, NAMI Collier.org. And
And
thank you,
Dawn.
Jeannie, for making this the topic today. So important.
Dawn?
Yeah, so I think Javier did send mine through as he did everyone else's, but it is dawn.bellamarch. Here's the novel, BELAMARICH @leehealth.org.
The reason we're asking for it again, because sometimes when we send it out, people don't see the side things. So I want to make
Got it.
sure everybody gets their information. I don't know if you want to share something, Vicky or Javier, you're welcome to do it right now. If you want to share any information like an email or something.
You can, anybody who doesn't know me in Collier County, you could just call Beth. But
Or me.
I just want to say the backgrounds, and of course I knew Beth and Scott, but Dawn, what a delightful addition that you are. And I don't really think everybody knows all the work that Javier and his team do behind the scenes, but you talked about having fun. There's a great benefit concert for three counties, which is Boots in the Sand. Every single one of it's if you like country, it's Leonard Skinner, Big and Rich. There's like 30 guys coming. They all volunteered. They're all coming on their own dime. All of the money stays in Lee and Collier and Charlotte County. All of it, 100%. We've got room for 8,000 people. It'll be sold out, but I shared it if you want to have it's very reasonable tickets. I think they start at 50 or 60 bucks, but check it out and feel free to share it so that we can help our town. And like you said, Jeannie, and nobody ever gives Jeannie the credit that she really deserves, and she hates us saying it, but she lost a lot, yet she kept going for her friends and colleagues and associates and board members. And that's the kind of leader and friend you are, Jeannie. So I thank you for, at least for some of my mental health. Jeannie Sweeney helped. So God bless you, Jeannie, for all you do. And
Thank you for your kind words. Javier, do you want to give your email again or phone number, whatever you wish?
Yeah, you can always email me here at Conrick at Javier, JAVIER @conrickpr.com, or reach out by phone at area code 239-690-9840, extension 1005, and I'd be happy to answer any website or Zoom meeting questions you may have.
Perfect. I want to thank everyone, and remember, give everybody a voice. Everybody around you. I was at a grocery store and the guy was ringing me up and he was having a hard time, and I asked him a question. I was able to just say a little prayer with him. Everybody needs help. As we mentioned, it doesn't matter if you had nothing happened to you, give them a voice. That's how we heal together. Thank you, everybody, today, and thank you for our listeners today. We will be sending this out once we have it all fixed up to everybody, and we hope in the near future we're going to send it out to the community because the information that you shared was priceless. Thank you again. This is Jeannie Sweeney with the Above Board Chamber. My email is Jeannie, JEANNE @aboveboardchamber.com. Our website is www.aboveboardchamber.com, where you will find Vicky, Javier, Scott, and Beth all as members. We just got to get Lee Health and we have a straight. So thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.